I'm very glad to actually, as Mark has asked to do, to officially, if you want to launch what you're doing tomorrow here on the Scaling Up Nutrition Business Network, because it's absolutely important. I've come to believe more than anybody else that for many of the challenges that we have today, if business does not get actively involved, we won't have a solution. Too many businesses, as I've said many times, are simply bystanders to a system that gives them life in the first place, and it's very hard to understand when we have so many challenges. So if we can get this force of business involved in this post-2015 development goal panel of 27 members, there are only 2 members from business, and a lot of them were asking, why are you there from business? But you know, 9 out of 10 people in the world in one capacity or another actually works for business. And if you really want to get these sustainable solutions, you have to make that integral part of business models. So it seems so logical to me, but it's hard work to get everybody involved. And I'm very pleased to see that you've given response to this rallying cry and that you've all decided to be here. And it's actually very key that we do that with transformational partnerships, as we call it, with everybody involved. I don't want a meeting anymore with business alone. It would be great to have meetings with all stakeholders there and trying to all focus on these right outcomes, and you'll get farther. It's actually, Jay was there and we were talking about South Africa, and it's actually an old African proverb that says if you want to go fast, you have to go alone, but if you want to go far, you have to go together. And I think in this case, there's no doubt about the fact that we want to go far. And that is obviously what you're going to talk tomorrow. Unilever, the company I represent, anytime you need to go back to the history of these companies, why we are there in the first place. But we are there in the first place to improve society, be it the hygiene in Victorian Britain or be it the problems of malnutrition. In fact, the poverty was so high at the end of last century that 2 of our Dutch forefather companies, Van den Berg Jurgens, for the Dutch people here, they were actually asked by the government to find a cheaper and healthier alternative to butter. And that was actually the origins of margarine. We shouldn't forget that. And even today, obviously, wherever we are, we reinforce these products. And it's simply the right thing to do. And that would be the same with our savory products or other things. So what we're talking here about today is quite normal to us, especially you know, being a company that deals with 2 billion people a day using our products. It is more than just providing the functionality. If you can reach, like we do in many parts of the world, more people than governments can or anybody else, it also brings with that a responsibility that just goes more than the basic benefits or what I call the short-term buck. And increasingly the consumer is expecting that of you. There's something wonderful happening in this society with digitization. It's 2.5 billion people. 2.5 billion people is 1 out of 3. Just think about that. Is actually connected via the internet. 1.5 billion people are on social sites. I always say Facebook is the 3rd country in the world after China and India. They just passed 1 billion people. And these consumers increasingly are demanding it. You see it every day in the paper. This weekend, last weekend, if there's a fire in Bangladesh, the first thing they want to know is which were the companies. If there's a country that has a deficit, they first want to know who's paying tax. If there's a problem to be dealt with poverty, undoubtedly they want to know which companies are socially responsible. So I keep saying, and this has to be understood with no less or no more words, that companies that don't understand that they have to be part of the solution are going to be dinosaurs in the not too distant future. And it's actually happening around us. The companies cannot once more be mere bystanders to the system that gives them life in the first place, and you have to find ways to internalize in your businesses some of these bigger global challenges, how daunting they may be. But in your own modest way, small or big companies, you have to start making contributions. You know, it is absolutely. I was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was in the Dharavi slum in Mumbai. I don't know if any of you have been there, but there's over a million people actually living there on 1.7 square miles. That's about the size of 2 square meters. That's less than a double bed that these people live in. And I wanted to see that because it's in a community in itself, and to some extent brings home again how fortunate we are the way in the parts of the world that we've been born with the tools that we've been given, to be honest. But there you see the importance of nutrition like anywhere else. It's not just about calories or food, it's about nutritional value. To give these people a chance, and I drove that home again, how important that is for their own dignity and their plight to succeed. So when we talk about a world that isn't functioning quite, that's the world we live in right now, where 1 billion people go to bed hungry, where every 6 seconds still a child dies of hunger. It's just hard to believe that we accept that as a world that we want to live in. And then you hear Mark talk about 170 million children stunted under the age of 5, and business ought to be actively involved in that. And you know, often I hear, I don't know if you do, well, that's a problem of the emerging markets, and we will solve it over time with globalization and with economic growth. But if that is the case, with the enormous growth and wealth creation we've had, you know, how come we're at this point where we are right now? And it's very clear that what that tells you is that the model of growth, which after all has lifted over 500 million people out of poverty, the globalization. But it's also fair to say it is a system that has only functioned with over-consumerism and with leaving too many people behind. And in any system where too many people feel that they're not participating or are left behind, these people will ultimately rebel against the system. You would do the same. That's at the roots of the Occupy Wall Streets or the Arab Springs and many other things. And we've just seen the beginning of it, to be honest. And people think it's an emerging market problem that we're talking here. If that is what you're discussing tomorrow, it's actually not the case. I was 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago in the food bank in Washington. We were doing a program with them. All the regional food banks are... this one was telling me that 1 in 5 children in Washington area is undernourished. Most of them not getting any meals anymore at home. They have to rely fully on their schools to be fed. And the issue of nutrition is creeping in there. 46 million people in America live off food stamps, which I didn't realize, I should have, but I learn every day as well, is that it basically only lasts till the middle of the month. And then they're scraping with whatever fills their stomach, up to the point of sniffing glue. We met some people to make it till the end of the month. In Europe, which is the part of the world that we are right now, about 25% of the population is again slipping into poverty. And while some governments don't want to have it on their agenda, even here in the UK or many other countries, the issue of nutrition is becoming very prevalent. And the challenge, and that's why I have a lot of respect and energy for scaling up nutrition, is the global governance is difficult. You see that on the G20s, or you see it on the G8s, you see it on the climate change, you see it on the Doha rounds. We've moved to a very interdependent and complex world in all dimensions. And unfortunately, our institutions and governmental systems haven't adapted. And that's why it's so important that movements like this get their energy and their responsibility to move things forward. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen anymore, at least not in the foreseeable future. It's not good or bad, it's just a reality. And that's why I started with my little joke about Brussels, but it's actually more than a joke. And we cannot sit there and be critical about it. We have to take that responsibility to move things forward. So the Sin movement has certainly, its time has come to break some of these molds of addressing some of these issues in a conventional way. That's why I was very pleased to see the Zero Hunger rallying cry of the Secretary General, and then again nutrition firmly into this. But as I said, business now needs to become more of a trailblazer and not to trail behind. And that's why my rallying cry to you is, see in each of your business models what you can do, combined with the people that are just already in this audience. We reach the billions of people. And yes, we often actually reach people that are on the bottom of the pyramid as well. And if we can just look at that in responsible business models, whatever it is, be it the basic nutrition we can provide, the improved diets we can give, health training that comes with it, whatever the contribution is that you want to do and build into your business model will have a multiplying effect. As Mark was saying, and it's not surprising, business people like a good return on their investment. Unfortunately, in this world, we've only looked at the return on capital investment. We've not looked at the return on social investment or the return on natural capital investment. If we would do that also, business people would be the best ones to optimize that return. And the moment we can optimize the economic, the natural capital, and the social capital returns, this world is flying. So here is an opportunity to broaden this dimension. And the case is enormously exciting for business people who like to have a high return. In fact, if you spend $1 combating hunger in this case, it actually can unlock $30 in terms of savings in reducing public health costs or increasing the economic productivity. I don't know of few other investments that frankly have such a high return. And obviously, the one thing that we have to understand, which you know again, is that just the improving nutrition by itself has an enormous positive effect on the economic growth and development of a country, but the reverse is not always true. We have some countries like Indonesia or India, if I may name a few, that are more or less food independent, but they don't have the right nutritional levels. And just on the economic growth itself, people think, and I think that number is not far off, that we're losing about 2 to 3% of the economic growth because we're not addressing this simple issue. That frankly is one of the easiest challenges to address if we decide to do this, as is the challenge of the 1 billion people going to bed as well. You know, it only takes 1% more food to not have these billion people go to bed hungry. And yet we're capable of wasting 30% of food in the food supply, and we're capable of sending another billion plus people into obesity, with diabetes too now being one of the biggest epidemics, but that's for another thing, for another time. So it is about providing the right nutrients. It is about working together. I'm very excited about David having the 33 countries already signed up by its latest count. I was very pleased to lead the task force on the B20 for food security, and we were doing this in France and we were doing this in Los Cabos with Calderon and the last one in Mexico. We're fighting very hard to have food security and nutrition again around the G8 here in the UK and the G20 in Russia. But it's not so easy because a lot of the politicians have become very short term. And they don't see the correlation as well as we do behind growth and job creation and the importance of nutrition or sustainable growth. And I think we as business people more than ever have to be sure that we keep it very high on the agenda. But at the Global Food Security Task Force that we had for the B20, we had 15 companies that actually signed up, all very energetically in the Grow Africa initiatives, the new vision for agriculture. And I was very glad to see that we were also able to put nutrition more and more at the heart of some of these issues that we were trying to solve here. So that gives me encouragement. But the reality is also there's much more to be done, obviously, and that's why you're here, providing, hopefully, affordable products, nutritional products with your companies, enabling this access to local markets that other people cannot get to, investing in some of the research that you're doing and sharing that with others, your scientific and technical innovations for which you're all known, and then some of the knowledge you have in changing consumer behavior. And many of you are consumer goods companies and know how to get that across to mothers, and because it often is mothers or children in school programs, etc. Now I'm very encouraged. I was talking to Indra on the weekend from Pepsi for different reasons, and they have a wonderful. She was telling me a wonderful iron deficiency reduction program in India itself, major contributor obviously to anemia that you're well familiar with, and believe it or not, more than half of the population there is affected. So enough food, but not the right nutrition, as we talked about. And then you all know Vanista with her Britannia nutrition. We had the Scaling Up Nutrition event at Downing Street, and she just made the statement that it was quite normal that all her, the cookies that she sells and all these were that was so normal for her to have them all reinforced. And then I got interested in what she was doing, and they have a Britannia Nutrition Foundation, where again I found that they have enormous health education programs, and then they include basic hygiene and sanitation in that in India that show tremendous impact. They have actually the hard data to see that. And then my friend Feike from DSM in the Netherlands, as a Dutchman, obviously we like to have Dutch friends as well. And he, DSM has always been one of the first ones involved, as Martin knows, in the World Food Program. and seriously contributing without really asking themselves first what's in it for me. They very well understand the benefits, and obviously their Nutri-rice and their reinforcement that they're looking at and versus the ordinary rice is enormous. And I think the partnership that they have with the World Food Programme in places like Bangladesh or Cambodia or some other places, and I cannot mention them all, Vietnam, that is probably one of the good examples of how it should be done. So I could go on and tell you here about 100 other stories of companies that have done tremendous work to make their contributions. I deliberately focus on some of the great companies, and some of you are represented here. But wouldn't it be great if we get just a critical mass a little bit more? Wouldn't it be great if the food company, who represents, frankly, all citizens of this world, if we at least can get 100, 150 of these companies, including the retailers, by the way, actively involved in this, we truly can change this. We truly can get to the vision of the Secretary General. We truly can get to the vision of David, get to the vision of Mark, and many others. Not only zero hunger, but eradicating the whole issue of nutritional shortness, if you want to. So I think that's the new tomorrow we should all be striving for. That's the new tomorrow that we should also be sure we build on the post-2015 development goals. A new tomorrow, frankly, where children can grow up well-nourished. A new tomorrow where children can learn the way we had the opportunities to learn, stay healthy the way we stay healthy, and where each in turn obviously can make a contribution to society and have a positive outlook for them and for many others to come. So I'm here because I feel passionately about you putting so much energy behind that. David, unwavering energy. Anytime I send David an email, where's David anyway? Where are you sitting, man? He's too shy. Why don't you stand up and get an applause? I know you don't want it. I'm known for answering my emails very quickly, but I have to say I have a role model in David. Anytime I send him a question, I get 2 pages back of what I should be doing. So I feel like I partly work for him. But you know, it's through the efforts of Gain, of Mark, of David, of the World Food Programme, and many others. The 33 countries now, the heroic heads of state. We got Odinga to sign up at the event during the Olympics. People that are really now committed. It's becoming critical mass, and it's more than critical mass. And if we can now prove that this can be solved, we've really done the world a bigger favor than you think. But it requires you as companies, and I'm so pleased again once more that you've taken that responsibility, and I certainly look forward to many of these projects with you. If we as a company can share the ideas, the bottlenecks, some of the challenges that we've had, because any mountain you climb is not a smooth one. You have to have some little bumps. Sometimes you have to go down a little bit to acclimatize before you go up again. And it's the same here. So if we can draw from each other's learnings and wisdoms, we could go even faster. But be that passionate advocate into your companies. If your CEO isn't here and you feel there are some bottlenecks, don't hesitate to call me. I'd be happy to be part of that solution as well. And together we'll get there. And I think we owe that. We owe that to these people who actually should be standing here, but for reasons of being stunted or for reasons of being too hungry to talk, they're not here to represent themselves. And that's why we are here. So thanks for your time.